Good morning, everybody. Nice to meet you. I'm Rick, Head of Insight Strategy and Planning. Thank you for joining us. You're all going to get a certificate just for your achievement in getting up to the 40th floor today. Thank you for your patience in dealing with different lifts, but you'll find it's well worth it. A, for the fantastic content we've got, B, for the spectacular view. Also, as you leave, you can play through your head, one of these 14 contestants could be Lord Sugar's next business partner, which I think these buildings put into your brains. So, we've got a fantastic lineup for you today. We're going to share some results from the research. We then have a fantastic panel moderated by Nikki Kemp of Creative Brief, talking to businesses where subscription has played a huge part in what they do. But then Dr. Sarah Faust, one of our data scientists, will be sharing with you the importance of personalization. After that will be coffee. Then we have a live recording of Waxing Lyrical, our sister creative agency, Wax On's podcast. And then we will be taking you through some behavioral economics and how that impacts subscription. Before we have the marketing director for Reader Revenues from The Guardian, a fantastic story talking about the journey they've taken to finally turning a profit and how they encourage their readership to make donations and make subscriptions. So I hope you'll find a really engaging day. So without further waiting, let's dive into the findings from the paper. So this project began when we saw a stat from some Royal Mail research, which talked about 58.6% of businesses who do subscriptions are looking to invest in new additions to their portfolio in the next year. And we thought it was really interesting. Given the headlines, we wanted to delve in, wanted to find out more. Because there's plenty of subscriptions out there. And throughout this whole process, defining what makes a subscription, is something that's more of a classic membership. Does that qualify as a subscription? And I think the answer we've taken to that is yes, there are some things we would all expect to see, a box turning up on your doorstep every month, through to ways that memberships and value given back to you has changed over time. Given one of our specialisms of charity, I wanted to reference them like Scope's Mindful Monsters. The idea of a value exchange in return for that regular giving amount month on month, again, having flavors of the subscription model and having value to their businesses. So these are the sort of examples we've looked at. And why it's important is the real value it can add to your business. It's the extra value it can bring in by having that direct customer relationship, but it's also the value that data and understanding and that closeness to your customers can give. We've all felt the pinch of GDPR. How do we move beyond that? Well, again, subscriptions can enable you to do that. There's also a significant opportunity. Going back to that Royal Mail research, the projected growth is from 583 million in 2017, a 72% increase to 1 billion by 2022. Now, that is a conservative estimate. Given the amount of small players who can move into the subscription market, that 2017 figure is estimated could go as high as 700 million. So again, the 1 billion figure could be reached faster. So it's something that has to be on every marketeer's minds, and I think the attendance here today shows the value in that. So what are people subscribing to? Unsurprisingly, it's dominated by entertainment and digital in the first pass. I mean, a show of hands, which will probably reveal Spotify and Netflix membership within there. But we're seeing other people move in. The second and third place is taken by the brands you would expect to see: food and beverage, health, beauty and grooming, some more examples of those as we go through the day. But insurance, finance and fintech, clothing and travel starting to come up. And I think the key takeout from this would be whatever market you're in, there is a role that subscription could play with engaging with people. Now, this is really interesting. Looking at the traction of who's got multiple subscriptions, as with most early adoption things, it skews younger. So there's definitely an opportunity for traction at the younger end of things. But 11% of age 55 plus are signed up to multiple services. This is really interesting. If they're already at 11%, to us that represents a huge opportunity. The Economist has written fantastic work about how over 55 is a really underserved audience. We know they've got affluence. We know this boomer into the silent generation audience have money to spend, and they're willing to spend it, and they feel aggrieved that brands aren't talking to them in the right way. So for us, seeing that 11% figure, that is a huge opportunity and a place where you could steal thought leadership or engagement, developing products relevant for that audience. And by relevant, it's trying not to think of them as salt and pepper or silver surfers. It's things that are appropriate to that stage in their life with their economic value. One of the things that's very stark and it was a question in the Q&A. Somebody emailed us a Q&A and said, look, we're interested. How would you market a subscription? How would you engage with people? We saw it in our figures. We also saw it in the Mary Meeker report. Word of mouth and recommendation is huge. We all talk so much about the power of owned, earned, shared media, but here earned really has a value. If somebody's having a good experience, they'll tell a friend. If somebody's enjoying their subscription, they'll invite a friend to join as well. That's a huge lever to pull on. Also gives the opportunity to test and learn, and why that data is so important, and why we put a whole section on personalization coming up shortly. The 84%, particularly as it skews younger, with that word of mouth and that recommendation. So again, testing and learning and building that, that ability to talk about why you should join the subscription. Relationship goals. Now, this may seem like a very spurious number. 19 months, 2 weeks is how long average people subscribe. Now, when I first saw that, I wanted to dig into it. So the feedback is that's the mean from all the responses we got. So there are some people who will stop after their free trial has expired. There will be some of the 16% who claim to have never unsubscribed, the people who just set it up and then can't be bothered to stop it. But 19 months, 2 weeks, it gives us something to think about. It gives us something to reflect on. Just over that year and a half of relationship, how can you build a relationship with customers? How can you derive value? How can you sell in other services and build greater economic value over time from those customers? And again, we'll start to look at some of the reasons why. So, this is possibly the most northern headline I could have given you for the title slide. Perceived hassle is off-putting. You won't see that anywhere this side of Cannes. But hassle, I thought, was a really good word, because if you look at any of these top 4 reasons why people wouldn't sign up to a service, they're things where you just thought, oh, they're the things that make you roll your eyes and just go, oh, that would just annoy me. You know, the difficulty in cancelling a subscription can be off-putting. A long subscription contract. People don't want to be locked in. Constant email bombardment. An example of this, I bought my wife some Charlotte Tilbury makeup. It was a fine Christmas gift. The amount of makeup tutorials I now receive on an almost daily basis is an example of how bombardment can go wrong and not understanding the data correctly. But then finally, uncertainty over setting up a direct debit. Again, that's tied very much to that cancelling the subscription. How easily can I get out of it? So again, making that very clear at the start of the journey becomes really, really crucial. On the flip side of that, how do you start that relationship? How do you start that 19-month, 2-week journey? Well, free plays a huge part. Free trial, again, 45%, the highest reason for people engaging. And at 35%, the 4th highest, I saw an offer or a discount. So that value is there as one of the key drivers. But if you look at the 2nd and 3rd, it's also relevancy and how important this thing means to me. So I wanted to easily, frequently receive a product or a service, or I'm passionate about and interested in the product. Being direct to consumer means you can not only get close to the consumer, but they can get close to the things that really matter to them. In Decoded, Phil Barden talks about the concept, if you want to make behavioral change, help people achieve their own personal goals. How can the products you develop, how can the things you make help people achieve those goals, be that their passion point, their hobby, or help them improve something in their life? How can your subscription can help do that, that would be a huge example. Going back to that Mindful Monsters scope, it was a way of helping parents have a relationship with their children to encourage them about key qualities they want to see develop in primary school children. There's a real value coming back. So again, think about how you can help people achieve their goals. Now, churn, again, in some of the questions we had with people in the build-up to this, how can a brand protect itself against churn? The top one, again, tied to the value, subscription was too expensive, 47% of people said that. The free trial had expired, they're the younger people, the shorter relationship people dropping out. I didn't need it anymore, again, playing to the relevance. I wasn't satisfied with the product service, or I switched provider. I wasn't satisfied is interesting, because again, because you can have a dialogue if you're a direct consumer, you can understand what customers want, you can build relevance and hopefully by reasons that they won't find reasons to leave you. The 5th, I switch provider shows you, there's all the talk about if you start a subscription, you win the battle, you get the customer close to you. It doesn't mean that you can't win that customer back from somebody else and get them to switch provider. So that isn't a closed door, but it's something you just have to work harder at. I just wanted to put up a note about the future of subscriptions and where we see the market going, because I think a lot of the learnings we make now will inform how we behave in the future. And it's interesting, as the debate about the climate crisis grows, it's interesting how brands are bringing in new products. For example, if we produce less things, we will recycle more. So what we talk now, second-hand shops became vintage, and that's going to become a new ownership model. So again, You could look at subscription in the frame of that is how does ownership change? So I think lessons we learn now will inform how we market in 5 years, in a decade's time. 2 examples I want to put up. That Adidas trainer is called the Futurecraft Loop. It's a trainer made out of one thermoplastic, one single material that can be constantly rejuvenated and recycled. So the concept of ownership, if you wear a pair of trainers down into the ground, they can be repaired, rebuilt again, and be box fresh. What does the ownership model look like for that as a product recycles and moves through different phases? Likewise, motoring. We saw this talk of self-driving cars. We see by 2040 stopping having the combustion engine. As we move to a battery system, already you see subscription models in some markets for batteries for cars. At mass level, when we don't need petrol stations anymore, is pulling up on a forecourt and receiving a fully charged battery to plug in your car in about a 10-minute window. That's where subscriptions could be. That's an extreme example. But again, it shows the importance of the lessons we learn now will shape how we behave in the future. So, whittling down the so whats of the last few slides is be prepared for disruption. You've got to capitalize on that growth opportunity. Flex the age spectrum. Just because younger people are adopting shouldn't stop you considering the older audience. That's a huge opportunity and something to be embraced. Reduce the barriers to trial. You know, those harder to set up direct debits, long contracts. Try and reduce those to get people in. Use that free, use that trial period and that sense of value as the springboard to then start to build that relationship up. Learn from the churn, and again, Sarah will talk about that later on in the personalization section, but find out how to keep your customers happy and extend beyond that 19 months, 2 weeks. Embrace personalization, and again, we'll talk about that later. Harness recommendations. Use the power of that word of mouth to get new subscribers in. And outside of entertainment, taking that long strand of what people are subscribing to, I think the message from that slide is look for new opportunities. Any market can benefit from subscription. Look to find new ways in. So that's the start. That's very much the springboard, and that's going to enable us to get into a lot of the great content we've got now.